Can you all see?
Yes, we can see. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so we thought to share this with you today. Thank you for joining our session. Um, we are excited to be here with you today and sharing our findings of a study that was done in 2020 during emergency remote teaching COVID-19. We'll tell you a lot more about it, but first of all, we're just going to introduce ourselves.
Good morning, everyone. It is a great privilege to be with you and a big first for presenting with my wife. So I think I might get a couple of elbows in the ribs here and there, but luckily I've unshared my video. I'm an instructional designer at the Northwest University, and we look forward to sharing how Jani's research is universal in its findings and how it reiterates what most instructional designers and e-learning practitioners are dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
So hi everyone, my name is Jani Prinsloo and I'm a senior e-learning and change consultant at Eiffel. I've been working in teaching and learning since 2004 and specifically in higher education since 2012. I have different hats in this industry, from a teacher to a lecturer to an instructional designer to a peer reviewer, etc. It's been a privilege and I'm really excited to share our findings with you today.
So the progression of the session will be for Jani to first take us through the background of the study. Then she will give us a bird's eye view of what lecturers experienced during the COVID-19 emergency remote teaching modality, better known as the ERT. And I will then summarize 6 core design ideas or principles that were derived from the study, and ending off with a short conclusion from our side, which will hopefully enable us to take some questions and have a bit of a discussion.
Okay, so let me start off with the background to the study. So I'm going to just quickly share with you what the research goal was, how the study was conducted, who the target audience were, and what did the study contribute. So none of us were prepared for what we went through in 2020 and kind of still are going through, especially in higher education where lecturers had to take their already planned face-to-face courses and rapidly or speedily move it online. These circumstances fueled our interest to find out more about what these lecturers are experiencing, what they're learning through this process, and how they would advise other lecturers in similar circumstances in future. I did this study as part of my master's at the University of Johannesburg, together with Dr. Nicola Pallet and Prof. Jeff Lautenbach. And I asked Heinrich to join me in presenting it today because, as you all know, postgrad studies with 3 kids and working is a family effort. This study was based on the first 2 phases of DBR. So in phase 1, that was the part that consisted of a literature review as well as semi-structured interviews, and the interviews were specifically done with lecturers at public higher education institutions in South Africa. Phase 2 was then when I derived the draft design principles from the responses. Okay, so I want to also just share with you quickly what the lecturers experienced during COVID, and I'm going to share 2 parts with you. The first part is the challenges that came out, and the second part is the highlights and opportunities that they actually found within this very difficult situation. So the first challenge is access to devices and internet. We always focus on the students not having access, but this is something that really came out a lot with the lecturers, where they didn't have adequate access to devices, to internet, to data, etc. They're not having the necessary skills to move courses online or work on the LMS. Although we know that a lot of institutions have already incorporated the LMS since the 1990s, people aren't using it optimally yet. Then setting boundaries for students, balancing work and life was a big challenge for them, because we all jumped on a bandwagon of communicating in any way, shape and form to the students. Social media, WhatsApp groups, LMS, emails, phone calls, etc. And that became just too hectic to control. So lecturers said that they had to set very clear boundaries on where and when we communicate to each other. Then academic time that was missed. This caused a huge burden, and it's still causing a burden on people. Where those few months that was missed was really, really difficult to catch up. Lecturers really felt challenged, they felt overwhelmed, and they felt anxious. So those were all of the initial feelings that they had. Then lecturers started experiencing some small victories and some highlights that they pointed out. And this is one that I actually can't believe that we are saying, but previous emergency remote teaching circumstances like fees must fall that we had in South Africa and the Ebola virus, etc. Those actually prepared people to this move, to this rapid move online during COVID. Then people were very excited, lecturers were very excited about what opportunities the online learning and the emergency remote teaching bring to higher education institutions. Lecturers started feeling more confident as they started using the tools. The more they used the tool, the more they wanted to use it, and the more they saw, oh, okay, I can actually do this. Then previous perceptions about online learning has changed a lot. I think we've also seen it today. There's a much more positivity around what can be done. Things that people thought can never be done online can actually, in fact, be done online. Then they were very surprised about how resilient, focused, and adaptable their students were. And that was quite interesting because they thought the students won't cope, but the students actually supported each other very well. Then lecturers felt very excited about how they can now rethink their course design and delivery and make use of these online tools very creatively. I know one of the lecturers that I spoke to used an avatar as his person that sends out announcements every week, and the students really liked that.
Thanks, Jana. I think as you went through those examples, we also saw earlier with discussions by Prof. Linda and Prof. Johannes Kronig, etc., that it is stuff that is coming up again and again in this modality. I think what's important also to note is that the study aimed to validate simple and easy design principles that worked in supporting lecturers and students. So we tried to really stay clear, or the research tried to stay clear of academic lingo, abstract, nothing too abstract, just practical, tried and tested design principles to serve our lecturing staff and students who were in a place where they really needed to be as successful as possible. There's a lot of principles that the study found to be worthwhile and that works and it needs to be incorporated. But the biggest challenge was how do we condense those and make it practical? So that was an important challenge in the study. But what was quite enlightening and a very positive effect is universities across South Africa started sharing openly documentation, resources, templates that really reiterated research that we did. So in helping us to utilize a bare minimum that can create success, design principles that really brings back the bare minimum principles that is needed to survive an ERT was definitely motivational. So what are the principles? And I think it's important to note that these are often reiterated with resources that's out there. I'm immediately thinking of my own institutions, resources, Keep on Teaching and Learning, UCT's resources, Rhodes University. So it's also good that you can test the research at hand of what's actually happening in practice. And at the end of the day, that is what design-based research is all about. So the first principle that really comes strongly to the front when assisting lecturers in this modality is that a redesign for online is needed, but you've got to be extremely wary of the time monster. So what you what you have needs to be transformed, and what is needed needs to go beyond what you've got. A redesign, or as we IDs refer to it, storyboarding or blueprinting of a module, always needs to start with what you have rather than having a clean canvas. We've seen so many academics, also in this research study, voicing frustration and burnout when attempting to completely redesign by throwing out the old for the new. The second principle is to have a clear plan and a structure before you start. Online components, especially in terms of considerations of notional hours, learning outcomes, and LMS technologies, require a lot of time. Create a plan that closely links to your learning outcomes and notional hours when you are in this phase and busy with this principle. Make sure that your design is logically packed, consistent, and guiding students through it intentionally. And the only way to truly do that is to put on your student hat. The third principle, the dreaded assessment strategy. So I think what's also clear from discussions we've seen earlier is that this is the hot potato. But at the end of the day, I think what has become quite clear, specifically in the academic arena, is that we simply cannot continue to assess students the way we did. And I think that consensus that we see in the world of academic and research papers, etc., shows us that we won't be returning to assessment practices that merely test knowledge. Knowledge is changing, and through the rethinking of assessment strategies for online delivery, the incorporation of more than one assessment method is something we continuously saw in the study. But it's through this variety of assessments that lecturers reported that assessment tests now not only tests knowledge, but actually started to legitimate a curriculum. The whole idea of critical pedagogy and allowing students to drive a curriculum really is something that online learning and emergency remote learning caused in a wonderful way. Maybe the best practical example of that is lecturers reporting that it's through deconstruction of an examination paper that they actually ended up having a quiz, assignment portfolio, and a discussion forum instead of just a normal examination paper. Another thing that also came out in the discussion, principle 4, synchronous sessions. We thought in low-tech learning environments with large amounts of students being marginalized and the great digital divide, etc., we thought synchronous sessions is a big no-no. The research showed that is not true. When synchronous sessions engage students to get rid of anxiety and to make them feel part of the learning process, then it simply is just amazing. If synchronous sessions is just a basic lecture, it really isn't effective. The fifth principle, providing practice opportunities. So often we confuse practice opportunities with giving multiple attempts in a quiz. That's not what practice opportunities entail. Providing students with constant reinforcement through practice opportunities and allowing them to understand almost an epistemological approach of care or an ethics of care really goes a long way in guiding students to achieve what they need in their preparedness for what's to come. Lastly, and I'm sure we've seen this from DVCs, we've seen this from head of schools, we've seen this across the globe, communication, communication, communication. But at the end of the day, what was probably the most interesting part for me in the study is that we once again saw good old WhatsApp coming to almost every single interview transcript. WhatsApp is still the most powerful tool, the simplest and most powerful tool in communicating effectively with your students. And as one lecturer described it in her findings, is that it created little pockets of online learning, which is a great thing.
Okay, so in conclusion, the reason why we wanted to share all of this with you today is really because during the pandemic, we saw that collaboration amongst institutions, between academics, between instructional designers, etc., were observed to be fruitful and regular. Institutions globally and especially in South Africa created guidance documents that was available for anyone to use. If you go on Google or you go and search on any of the institutions' websites, you'll find guidance in how to teach in emergency remote teaching. So the CHE also created a very nice guidance document, and these were all shared freely, and no one hid it behind any firewall or anything like that. And this kind of collaboration and support needs to continue. And I actually think that the symposium is something that helps us to see who the people are that we can connect with and learn from and share with.
And Jani, I think the one thing that really excites me as well is I don't think public universities view private institutions as threatening as they used to. So collaborations, both internationally and locally, has really opened doors in terms of improving the quality of learning. Colleagues, so we're going to open our webcam, and this is a great opportunity for you to ask Jani a lot of questions.
Sure.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you with this, but our time is unfortunately limited, so we have to go on to our next presentation. So I